I speak with one of the most credible resources of knowledge in our industry. Today, on episode 25 of Real Estate Photography Unlocked.
I'm just trying to get mine, but these agents got me losing my mind. Whatever happened to the good times? Man, forget about it. It's showtime. Let me show you how to get some rest, how to make millions, how to be your best. This is shout out to the REPs, to the shooters, producers, and the newbies. Welcome to our podcast. I'm your rep MC. We're here every week talking real estate photography.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 25 of Real Estate Photography Unlocked. And today I've got a very special guest. The first guest we have from another country, Darryl Stringer. Thank you, Darryl, for hopping on, and welcome to Real Estate Photography Unlocked.
Awesome to be here, Jonathan. Thank you very much.
Yes, and I also want to say, just to give you credibility, we were supposed to record this 2 days ago. I completely missed the appointment because my kids were having a horrible bedtime, and we're recording this at a weird time of day because he lives on the other side of the world. And man, you were really gracious with me missing the appointment. 100% polite. Absolutely kind, and that's something I've always got a feeling of you are. So thank you for being so gentle and forgiving.
No. I have messed up myself many, many times, and I will do it again. So the least I can do is to go, yeah, mate, I understand.
All right, no worries. All right, so let's dive right into the podcast. Today, the main things I want to cover are to really help people be better photographers, but most importantly, help people be better business photographers. Sure. Because I think that without a doubt that is our our biggest weaknesses as creatives is that, man, we try to think of creative ideas, we try to relate with customers, but so often the people who are losing in negotiations are the creatives just because of our personalities. So whether it is large corporations like Adobe, where they're trying to sneak in little extra charges wherever they can, or whether it be personal people like mentors or whatever you might, camera companies, and agents, of course, real estate agents, man, people trying to get us to lower our prices or do things for free because, man, they just didn't have a budget for real estate photography, right? Sure. Anyway, so I've seen you interact a lot in the Facebook groups, and I always thought you had good input and you've always been well measured. So tell us about yourself, your experience, first of all, with real estate photography, and where did you get started? When did you get started? How long did you do it? All of that.
Yeah, well, let's go back to the last century. And
the 1900s, the year of our Lord 1900s.
Yeah, yes. When the first cameras came out. Yeah, it kind of was. So started in 1998, doing it here in Brisbane, Australia, doing pro photography, shooting on film with our little Minolta film camera, 35 mil, and you'd go and do a shoot. Maybe two of them. You'd take your film canisters to the 1 hour photo processing lab and you'd drop it off. And then you'd sit down and you'd read a book for an hour. And then you'd go and pick up the film and then deliver it to the agent. Moving on then a couple of years later, then they started doing scans of the film. And we'd take that into a CD and we'd have to take that along. And then we got to 2003 and Canon released the 10D digital SLR. And we went, wow, that would be awesome. So we made the jump then into doing this. And through these years, like this was a family run business. Turnover was not great. We were sort of just hanging in there, if that. And then once I got hold of the digital SLR and started to experiment a bit with layering and masks inside Photoshop and started figuring out, hang on, I can take multiple exposures here and hand blend them with layer masks, which is all very familiar with us now. Right. But back then it was like, well, hang on, this is different. And I started doing that and then going, well, this actually makes a real difference for things like window exposures and putting light into other rooms, and started to really ramp that up. Once we were then able to do that, things really started to explode in terms of the business, we then started to having to add on team members, and we hired someone part-time, and 6 months later we needed someone full-time. And then just a few months later, we needed another full-time staff member. And it really ramped up then between sort of 2004 to 2009, growing out to a team of, I think we had 8 of us full-time in our company then, which we were pretty busy. We were one of the bigger companies in our city, and things were cruising along really well. And yeah, we fluctuated a little bit in terms of team numbers. As things started to change, and we kind of realized actually having a big team was not our thing. So then we shrunk down a little bit to get a smaller team. And that's the thing with business, is you sometimes need to jump in and experiment a little bit and find out, I don't want to be the big, busy business owner. I prefer a smaller team and working within that. And that's part of business as well. It's not trying to meet like a certain, you're only successful if you go in this particular path. It's trying to figure out where you personally sit well and then really thriving within that. So we did that and continued on until 2015 when we decided a change was needed. So sold the company then, which was fantastic. It took probably close to a year to find an appropriate buyer, because not everyone sort of understands or wanted to jump into buying a going concern. But we basically sold the whole company. So we sold our client list, we sold gear, there were vehicles, equipment, like it all went to the new buyer. And that was great. Everything ran smoothly after that. And then straight away, I jumped into building my coaching business.
Okay.
So that's when I started offering business coaching services, taken what I'd learned, because when I was going through running my photography business, we had multiple business coaches that I worked with. They were great people, but they didn't have an understanding of our industry. So they were coming from general small business operations. So they didn't understand what we were going with. So what I wanted to do was to create something for people within real estate photography specifically, from someone who had been there before and walked that journey and could then advise, speak the language, understood the challenges we faced, both in terms of working with those particular agents, but then also in terms of, what it's like building a team and growing that side of things as well. So that's why I jumped into that, offering coaching services, and I've been doing that ever since. Worked with now well over 200 photographers in, I think, 7 countries now, meeting with them regularly to offer guidance, answering emails, helping them negotiate with clients, whether it be within real estate or whether it be with interior designers and the architecture side of things, which is a big part of a lot of what a lot of photographers do as well. So just giving them that extra support, both in terms of training, but also in terms of just day to day. It's hard doing everything on your own and making clear decisions. Having someone that you can bounce ideas off and say, hey, Darryl, I'm thinking of doing this. Mm-hmm. Does this make sense? And then I can sort of advise, well, yeah, but let's maybe tweak it a little bit and we might be making better result if we can go in this particular direction. So that's providing that support is just a really big part of what I do. Because as you said earlier, making good business decisions is key. We can be as awesome as possible at the Photoshop and the exposures and the video and all of that. But if the business decisions aren't strong, then, maybe we're charging too little, or, we're just not communicating appropriately with clients and we lose those clients, or we don't get the clients that we want to work with because we're stuck working with these other cheap clients, because that's how we've positioned our brand to attract them.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the decisions you can make in a business are incredibly critical to your life. I would even compare a lot of the decisions you make in business at the same level of deciding who you're going to marry or where you're going to live and start your career. I think, for example, if you're deciding to hire somebody, that's a significant decision. Like you're going to date somebody, but if you're thinking about partnering with somebody, and putting ink to paper, that is truthfully the same level of decision as you would think to marry somebody. You've really got to do your homework. And if you go to premarital counseling for your marriage, which is something you should absolutely do, if you have any type of big decision, you should have a consultant that is credible, that you trust, that is got the chops and the experience to be able to share some wisdom with you. And
Sure.
I knew you were good, but I didn't know how good you were, and also how experienced. I just did in episode 24 an episode with Rich Baum, and he was talking about, I believe he got started in 2008 around those times, which is, an incredibly difficult time here in the US to get
Of course.
started. But you were in the game 10 years before even Rich Baum. And I never knew this about you, man. You should talk more about it. And you've done all the things that people struggle with. All the people who come to me and ask questions. The number one questions I ask: how to get clients, how to scale, how to sell. That is easily the top three, and you've done it all. So I would like to ask you all about that. First of all, I'm really interested. This is going to be so silly, but it's going to be excellent conversation. I'm actually very curious about what the real estate photography business, the industry was like, how it began, how it got started. A lot of people these days don't even know what film is. I actually shoot on film pretty regularly because I have a film camera that I inherited from my grandfather.
Very cool.
And in AE1, I like to shoot on portrait gold personally. I like a nice finer grain around 200, even if I have to have a lot more sunlight and light to make it work. And I just love the challenge of it. I'm by no means a hipster, where I'm just like, the film look, it just has more emotion to it. It does, but the reason I do it is because it really re-engages me to photography. I've been doing photography over 2 decades. I've been doing it professionally as my full-time career for probably 14 or 15 years now. But there's nothing like film to make me feel like day one. But what was it like shooting film back in the day? How many shots would you get per house? Obviously, were things like verticals really important to things back then? Like, can you talk about how you're getting it right in camera? Can you really trust the pharmacies, the 1 hour turnaround? What was all that like? Just out of curiosity, take us back to the day.
Yeah, well, I mean, so first of all, we just had to trust the particular photo processing lab, and we would have sort of 2 or 3 scattered around the city where we'd kind of trained them, if you like, and given them feedback and said, we need, this kind of level in terms of color accuracy and things like that. But, once it was sort of dropped out and you had those little 6-inch by 4-inch prints that you had to take with you, it was like, well, that's what you got, and you just had to take it to the client.
And what would the real estate agent do with that? Would they print it in a real estate book and distribute it throughout the city, or would it go in newspapers? And also, it sounds like you got, from day one, real estate photography had, outsourcers involved. A lot of people really hate the idea of outsourcing these days, and we'll talk about that in a second. But what did it look like back then?
So they would often, like, at least the market here where I was, all the agents would have a display in their window of properties they currently had on the market. So they'd have a printed sheet of paper with details about the property at the bottom, and then they would stick on with tape or something the 6-inch by 4-inch photos would be stuck on this sheet of paper in their window. They would then send things off to the newspaper, which had a really strong role back then. Everything, if you wanted to sell, you had to go through the newspaper. So yeah, they were doing that. In terms of how we shot, like verticals were kind of helpful, but there was only so much you could do when you're shooting with like a 17mm lens. You're going to get some curvature. We couldn't do any correction on that.
It just wasn't. Did you guys? So I worked under an old school photographer who was fantastic. He did a lot of commercial work. One of his tricks he would take a bubble level and connect it to the front of his lens to make sure that it was perfectly level. Would you guys do tricks like that? I'm just out of curious. If
We wouldn't do things quite like that. For one, I mean, we were still priced way too cheap. So we had to accommodate for that. When you factor in that, like afterwards, you then had to go to the processing lab and then drive back to the real estate agent's office and personally drop it off.
right,
Like the time frame for that was enormous. So we had to factor that in. So going for like the highest quality was not something that was even viable, really. We just had to try and get some good shots. I'd use I don't know if you remember the Mets flash units, the handheld ones that were kind of like a hammer.
no, I don't. That might have been before my time.
These sort of big sort of cylinder things with this big flash up on top. And we just had that like mounted on a bracket next to the Minolta camera. And it would just kind of like typically just bounce up off the ceiling.
Okay.
And that single flash. So you'd get sort of shadows and everything all over the place.
I have a competitor who's like that in our area right now.
Yeah, I'm sure
I can't believe he's in business.
Yeah, maybe he's still using the Mets flash. Yeah, and then they would just, the agents would then just work with it. It did then improve a few years later once we were then able to scan shots onto a CD, and we were sort of then able to email them across late at night, but only a few at a time because, we weren't much past dial-up. And you can imagine trying to email fairly large images across on sort of something pretty slow, not much faster than dial-up internet. So it was a very slow process.
And out of curiosity, there's a line. So Billy Joel, he's not Australian, but he became famous because of the Australian music industry. He actually kind of got popular because he has a song that's called The Piano Man. And in that song, he says, there's a guy, Pete, I don't know, but he's like, is a real estate novelist. Out of curiosity, people have been asking me, because once again, in another podcast, I talked about back in the day, real estate, there were people who were hired to write descriptions of a property before necessarily people could get photos for it. So they were hired to go to and write an attractive description of the property. Do you know if in Australia they refer to those as real estate novelist or real estate copywriter?
It would be a copywriter.
Okay, interesting. Well, anyway, I might have misspoken about the real estate novelist, but anyway, it's a nice artistic idea, I guess. But all right, that's such an interesting thing, and what I find most interesting about the way real estate photography was back in the 90s, at least the late 90s, it sounds so similar to this industry in a lot of ways today. You have real estate agents who want the images as fast as they can. You're not exactly getting paid a bunch of money, so that you don't have a lot of expendable profit or revenue to be careless with. And it was a lot of runaround. Man, I can't imagine having to go and deliver the photos straight to the real estate agent. Okay, so then digital comes along. As a businessman, you have to adapt to that. How did you see that shift in the industry coming? Right now, we're dealing continually. It seems like what used to be every decade with the technological shift, we're having every year or multiple times a year with technology advancements. Right now, I believe AI is the real big either ugly thing coming around the corner or positive thing coming around the corner. But how do you respond to things like digital coming into existence? How many people got wiped out because of that? What are the things that they did not do that caused them to become obsolete? And what are the things that you did that caused you not only to survive the shift, but it sounds like after digital came out, your business exploded.
It did,
because you took advantage of the disruption to the market.
Yep. Yeah. When the digital arrived, like we were all quite concerned that agents now had capacity to take their own shots and look on the back of the camera, as basic as it was, and do all of their own thing. But at least in our market here, I think at least the better agents, we did work with more of the top agents, not like the bottom ones. The top agents still recognize that the time needed for them to go and do that was still significant. So that was a big factor in it. And also then I think it was, we sort of lent into, I guess trying to help in terms of the presentation of the home was a big part of kind of what we used to set ourselves apart. So we would then really lean into being more than just the photographer. We would really work in partnership with our clients, and not simply just try and be in there and out of there in 20 minutes. We would typically staying on there for an hour or more, and really working with the client. So I think that in terms of being a partner with the agent was kind of our thing that kind of helped us through. And then I think then because of what we were then able to do with multiple exposures, I think then the quality of what we were delivering was higher than what they were getting elsewhere, and agents were clearly able to see that. So I think this is something to note. Agents aren't really good at seeing the nuances.
No,
they can't pick up on the little things, but when you're able to show them, a house with a view out towards the city or out over the river, and you can show them, well, here's one where, the photo's not great because the window's bright white and it looks like there's, a massive explosion going on out there. We just can't see anything.
Right.
Versus a photo that we've done where we've blended a correctly exposed image of the city view outside this, really expensive home. And they go, well, there I can see that city view, which is what this property is all about, and it's going to add value to it, versus this shot where they can't see a thing. It made it a really easy comparison.
Right.
So we're leaning into then what delivered value for the client and trying to speak in a language that they understood.
All right. And this is going to be an important, we're going to learn so much, because it seems like one thing that is always a constant is human nature. And I do believe that certain industries attract a certain type of person, and real estate agents sound like a certain type of breed where they don't notice the nuances. And you were able to sell people by pointing out differences. What's the way, like the best tips you can give for helping photographers get the message through on their quality and why it actually matters, and making the real estate agent actually care? This is going to be a fantastic episode, man. I'm loving this already. Okay. So, how do you get the message through? Because sometimes I feel like even I, with all of my experience, am just talking to a brick wall.
So one thing to do would be just to understand how agents communicate and what's important for them. So listen to what they're saying. And perhaps it's, going to real estate agent YouTube channels and real estate agent podcasts, not just the stuff that's related to our photography, but start to understand what they're talking about within their circle and what's important for them. And it's about, generating leads is a big one. It's about generating more listings. They really want to focus on that and start to understand what they're talking about in there. And then once you understand their language, I think the next step would be to get into conversation with them. I think one of the best things we can do is actually, rather than simply be throwing everything out at them, ask them questions, find out what's important for that agent. And I've found that when you can have conversations with agents, that's super productive, because then you can start to lean into, this agent values X. So how can I help them with X? Listen. I think listening.
And I couldn't agree more with that, because one of the things I learned from working under another photographer was that he said, I need to stop and put down the camera for a few months and just get a sales job for a while and just learn sales. Because his number one thing to me was like, hey, Jonathan, you've obviously got talent and you're eager to be a photographer, but you'll never actually make it as a professional and be able to provide for your family if you don't learn how to sell.
Sure.
So he told me to go and do that, and I did. And one of the things I learned at the sales job was to listen for tells.
Yeah. Sure.
And if you can find out what your customer actually cares about, then you can address those topics directly. Well, how do you find out what a customer cares about? The easiest way is exactly what Darryl is describing here, and it's usually when they call you up and they ask you their first question. Hey, if it's a cheap client, the first thing that's out of their mouth is going to be, how much do you charge?
Yep.
If it's somebody who cares about what's important, then they're going to say, hey, excuse me, do you have any examples I can see of ABC? Or another question I'll get is, hey, how fast is your turnaround time?
Okay.
Right? Because you'll have real estate agents who just want the images, and most likely they have been working with a photographer who has become inconsistent. So usually not only listening to them, but listening to the very first questions they ask you is a huge tell. So I come from it from a different angle, but we're definitely arriving to the same destination, which is listen to your customer. Yeah, man. This is fantastic. Okay. So you survived a tectonic shift in your industry. And you started to scale. Talk to us about the true challenges of scaling. I have done this myself. The only thing I haven't done is sell my business, which I don't plan to do for a long time. But I would love to ask you about the challenges, like, of going through that, where you have a little bit of a personal dilemma of, man, this is who I am. I'm not sure if I want to give away my baby, if you will. I know that George Lucas regrets selling Star Wars. I would feel the same way about any of my businesses. But for now, let's talk about the challenges, realities, and hopefully the benefits of scaling the business. And most importantly, this is something, guys, that I almost jumped out of my skin when he was saying this. He scaled up and then scaled back down. I would love to know why. And I also think, folks, a lot of you all that I'm seeing in the Facebook groups who are showing clear signs of overworked, burnout, negative lives need to scale down. So anyway, I'll leave it to you. Go ahead and tell us all about scaling up, and then how you did it practically, but also why you decided to kind of go a different direction.
Yeah. If I was to summarize the hiring process, and I've shared this before, it would be hire the best people, not necessarily the best photographer. We had, I look back, I mentioned earlier that we worked with a business coach. We probably spent a year or 2 years, almost every session with our business coach, simply discussing human resources challenges. Working with the photographers that we hired, and I admit we made poor hiring decisions, where we hired people that we thought that they'd be a good fit, because we were impressed by something about them. For some cases, maybe it was we were impressed by their ego and confidence. Oh yeah, that will make up. That will be good. We'd like that. For some, it was, the experience that they spoke about having. When I look back, the best team members that we had were those that were really good people and fitted in with our team really well. So not getting distracted by some of those other features was really, I wish we'd hired differently. Because we would have gone so much better, and that's what you learn from experience. So the hiring process is really important. We chose to hire full-time workers who could come in because we wanted to supply the gear, so we wanted to be responsible for that. We wanted them to be available all the time, and we wanted control too over like how they were presenting and things like that. We didn't want to just have random subcontractors that were a bit more unreliable. So that was perhaps a bit different to what a lot of photographers are looking for these days. And I'm not saying one area is better than another. It's a matter of sort of deciding like what works for you as the business owner. And in some situations, like hiring subcontractors would be absolutely the better decision, because that then gives you the flexibility to cope. So in terms of that flexibility, here in 2011, we had a massive flood in our city and the real estate market just fell away completely. We then had to lay off some staff members because we tried to hold on to them for as long as we could, but the work just wasn't there. And that was a challenge. We had some good people that we felt really responsible for, but the business just wasn't able to hold on to them. And then once we started laying staff off, that was when we started going, actually, we now do feel much better having this smaller team. There were far fewer HR issues that we had to manage. We'd made better decisions around these are the people that we want to keep, good people that we can hold on to.
That must have been obvious. So if you guys haven't scaled before, you go through a major mindset change and evolution because you grow a lot, realizing that, wow, everything I'm doing here now, and I'm not just responsible for me and my family, I'm responsible for someone else and their family too. So clearly you don't want to have to lay someone off, but it sounds like you were dealing with a natural disaster. Okay.
That's right.
So that's horrible. And you have to make hard decisions, but I can't imagine having to choose, okay, we've got to let go of people. Luckily I haven't run into that. I know lots of people have. I mean, thinking about the fire that we just had recently in California, and in Hawaii. But so yeah, sorry, I just related with that. I luckily haven't had to fire any of my photographers. I have hired people at my vacation rental and some of my other businesses that I had to let go. But the photographers I feel very close to, and luckily I've hired well. But anyway, tell us about the decisions you had to make and fire certain people and keep others. And you ended up saying like, oh, I learned a lot that those characteristics that those people had that made us end up firing them were actually much bigger problems than we realized.
Yeah, like we just found that we had been investing so much time into the people management side of things, and it was really distracting us, I think, from what our core responsibilities were to ourselves and to our other team members, and trying to make things work. So shrinking down for us was a much better fit. We enjoyed the work a whole lot more. And again, that's not to say that that's the right fit for everyone. So that's why I think it's really important about being really clear with yourself about how you want to do this. I mean, I've got team members or photographers I'm coaching at the moment, and some of them say, I just want to stay me, and just work for themselves and not expand. And that can work too. It has its challenges, because then if you go down with, you injure yourself and you sort of lay it up at home with a broken leg, or you get the flu and you're out of action for a week or two, there's challenges there just around in terms of how do you continue to manage the business.
Or just being able to take a vacation and feel good about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Being able to get time out is hard when it's just you. But then for some, that's still preferable to managing all those responsibilities around having a team.
Because if you're not good with dealing with people, then dealing with burnout is, as hard as it is much better than dealing with people if you're not good. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I avoided hiring for a long time purely because I enjoyed working alone so much. But I knew that once I started having a family and my wife and I started planning for a family, I know that I couldn't continue the business at the level that I wanted to continue it at without, and be a good father, which is incredibly important to me, without scaling my business. So I put it off consciously as long as I could, and then embraced it fully once I did. And now, we run all sorts of things, including this YouTube channel. So it can be beneficial if you do it right. But it's
I think
one of those things that you can like ruin your life.
right. I think it's just all about having the right systems in place around team management. So I think setting good expectations with your team about what you expect from them, and then having really good communication with them. So typically, if things aren't working, yes, it may be because you've got a C grade player and you needed an A grade player on your team. But it could also be like down to you as the business owner, just not being good with that communication. So some photographers, bless them, they probably shouldn't be hiring a photographer.
Yeah, I do find that as I kick this podcast off, I was talking about how some of us get walked all over in negotiation settings, and we need to learn to be less naive. But I also have found that a lot of photographers are very self-centered, and can man, some of the drama that happens in the Facebook groups between people just bullying each other, and
I'm not aware of what you're talking about, but go on.
I'm sure you've never seen it.
Yeah, no.
But and then anyway, I do find that once a lot of photographers get into an administrative position, they have a really hard time understanding why other people can't see it the way they do, because it should just be so obvious. And I also find that real estate photographers, I think just creatives in general, for example, when I shoot a home for someone who is a creative profession, let's just think about how awful it is to shoot for an interior designer. Nightmare, right? Photographers, we have a lot that we could learn, folks. Our personalities are wanting, to say the least. There's room to grow and to learn. Anyway, another thing I have noticed now that I'm mentoring people and also running things with Real Estate Media Hero and scheduling software is, people love to complain. So I thought real estate agents could get on my nerves a little bit, but I'm also finding that too, I love you guys, love working with you guys. You guys are my people, but I am shocked about when I compare real estate agents and how they can complain versus a photographer. Sometimes photographers lots of times get the gold medal for complaining. It's just interesting. So yeah, we have to learn to grow and be a little bit self-aware as photographers. Man, I did not realize how much I would agree with you on this podcast. I know I have disagreed with people in the past, and wasn't sure if there was much that we could relate with, being that you're in a different industry. But man, I don't think I've ever related with someone more. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, wow. Okay. So you're scaling up. You decide to scale down. You're realizing a lot of the issues at your business with your business at scale was hiring the wrong people. I could share stories endlessly of cleaners, contractors that I made the wrong decision with. Luckily, I learned all those lessons before I scaled my real estate photography business, and I chose good employees. I was merciless with my choice, and I made no apologies, and I knew all the red flags to look out for. Out of curiosity, just talking in generalities here without naming anyone specific, what are some of the red flags or the personal characteristics that once they were gone, you realized, oh, that was an issue? And that was making things difficult as business owner.
Yeah, I mean, probably ego and people who want to be the top dog in the room and aren't willing to allow other people to shine would be one of the bigger ones. I mean, I can think back to someone that we hired, and like in their first week, they were trying to position themselves right at the top and would not take any form of criticism really well. We justified it at the time because, and this is where processes are really important. We justified it at the time because we just really needed to have someone on team. We were too busy, and we went, oh yeah, look, that particular photographer's being a jerk, but we need to retain them because we just went through a 4-week interview process, and we got down to this one particular photographer, and I just don't have time to go through that process again. So let's just put it aside and hope that things work out. So having better processes in place around having people that you can then rehire if initially things don't work out, and then having good training processes in place that are less demanding on your time. So, when you, for example, train someone for 3 months, where they've followed you on shoots for 3 months, if you then get to the end of that time and it's time to assess their work and they're not up to standard, it's really hard then to dismiss them.
Right.
So looking at your own processes and trying to make it easy to hire, but perhaps easier to fire so you can move on to someone else is going to be very helpful.
Yeah, I have put a few safety kind of ejections that I have in my business model is I first, after the interview process, which is very lengthy and grueling, I have a 2-week preliminary hire process where they actually work with me and they come to all my shoots. And at the end of those 2 weeks, there's kind of a KPI, like key performance indicators. They have to be able to do certain things after that. And other people I have interviewed, I tell, listen, we're hiring another person for the position, but I want you to know that we really strongly considered you and you were a second or third place finish. We're hiring the other person on a preliminary basis. We believe they're a good hire, but if there's something that comes up in the next 2 weeks that we're not comfortable with, because once you get people out in the field, you learn a lot more, no matter how much you do in the interview process. So the preliminary process is if something comes up, we say, hey, you know what? I think we did make a mistake. Wish you the best. Here's your pay. And then we hire the person on deck. Yeah, and I have used that before, and it saved me. And I agree completely with you, by the way. Hiring someone with an ego is an absolute nightmare, no matter what position they're in. I've also found that teaching people or mentoring someone with an ego is just as impossible. So I'm not sure if you've seen that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's always just about working with people that are responsive, and I think then being self-aware ourselves and making sure that we too are responsive and acknowledging that we make mistakes. we can mess things up. Maybe we're not as good a photographer as maybe we think we are, and maybe there are things that we can genuinely learn from some of our team members if they come up with great ideas, and encouraging them to share that appropriately. I think it's got to be a two-way street.
And another thing, believe it or not, this might shock you guys, I have a little bit of an ego myself. Imagine that. And I have to constantly check that as well to make sure I'm thinking through things fairly. With a lot of the critiques that I'll do, whether it's software or creative processes, because I've got to make sure that the decisions I'm making are not just good for the audience, but they're good for my personal business. And one of the things that have always helped me to remain humble is the fact that a lot of photographers, especially in real estate, like to romanticize what we're doing here. Let's be realistic. We're shooting a lot of 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes. All right. We're not going to be getting any awards at the Oscars. So what I have realized is that after I die, I really don't want my family to remember me for my residential listing photography. This is not my magnum opus. And I actually train my employees that way. So they recognize, man, I don't need to get caught up in spending forever on a shoot. I need to get it right. I need to make sure I'm paying attention to the standards and the industry expectations, but I also need to keep moving, right? And also making sure that I'm paying attention to more important things, like making sure you're listening to your customer and the homeowner and keeping them happy. Getting a good shot is never worth upsetting the homeowner, right? You've got to have good customer service and good camera side manner. So anyway, just thinking about some of those things and just recognizing that, let's be honest here, be realistic with what we're doing, and then acting appropriately. I have always wanted to ask certain people, especially when I see people just going at each other in the comment sections, sometimes in my own YouTube videos or something. I'd really like to ask you guys the question, and this is the question I'd like to ask. How good did you guys get where you got to the point where you felt like it was okay treating other people that way? Like, was it when you learned how to speed ramp? Was it when you learned how to do 3D text? Like what is the skill that you get to where you actually justify just harassing other people and doing some of the things that people do? I can't believe it. So anyway, man, I never thought I would, like I said, this podcast was going to be this good, but man, that's awesome. All right. So sorry if I'm going off on a little bit preachy there, but yeah, dude, remaining humble. And I recognize I can also be critical here, but I usually save my criticism for people I believe are acting, how would you say, on faults with bad intentions. I think their intentions are really wrong and they're lying about it. That's when I'll get a little bit, I don't know, how would you say it? Strong worded? Sorry.
Forceful?
Anyway, am I making you a little bit uncomfortable? I'm sorry, Darryl. You seem like a nice guy. One thing I love about this is that I think naturally you're a very different person than I am, but it turns out underneath the hood we have come to a lot of the same conclusions, which I think is nice to see.
I think that's where like business experience kind of leads you. If you've been doing this for long enough,
yeah,
you kind of start to realize actually this is the path that works, both in terms of business and also in terms of self-development.
Okay. And the next thing I'd like to talk to you about that you mentioned was selling your business. Okay. So this is an existential thing that I think about often. And for example, I imagine retirement and how that might look. And if you guys haven't done that yet, you should start thinking about that on day one. When you start your business, you should start considering how you want to exit the market. Is this a temporary thing? Is this a long-term thing? Is this a lifelong thing? Because if you're planning on retiring with this, you need to have, first of all, personal finances set aside, but also you need to build your business in a way that you can sell it. Because if you are the business, you can't exactly sell the business. If you want a cash payout when you leave, you have to make sure it's scaled and that you are as small variable in the business as it can possibly be if you want to get more for your business. Now, I really can't speak to this a lot because I haven't sold my business. I am building it so that one day I can sell it when I'm in my 50s or 60s. But I really want to ask you also, what does life look like after you sell a business? Because I took a year abroad when I was in college, kind of just reset. And without that year, I wouldn't be where I am today. I think it was smart. But I also recognized at the end of that year abroad that too much travel is a bit bad for you. Like it can be an addiction, and you can really lose touch with reality a little bit. I traveled with some people who were just permanent nomads, and I mean, they're great people. There's all different perspectives, but I do feel like some who wander are lost. So anyway, I feel like retirement may feel like that. I have a hard time personally, and maybe you can give me a little bit of mentorship here. How do we go from being a grinding workhorse to not working? I feel like after a year or two, I'll get too restless and need to start another business or something. Tell me, preach to me. Share me your wisdom, wise one. And also, if you wouldn't mind, tell us what type of numbers we can look at. I know a lot of people when they sell their business are under NDA. You sold your business a long time ago. I'm not sure if you can or would even personally share those types of numbers, but try to be as accurate as you can with, you know what, if you're selling your business and you're making, let's say, $1 million in revenue and $500,000 of profit, you could realistically sell your business for X.
So first of all, what does it look like? I mean, for me, there wasn't really much gap between when I sold that business. So we sold it, I think, if I can recall, I think I then spent 2 weeks with the new owners, adjusting them and introducing them into everything. And then I left and I was pretty much straight into setting up my next business. So I really didn't really give myself a gap. I just wanted to launch as quickly as possible. I was really excited. Like, you know how it is, like when you stop doing something or when you've got something new to start on, and you just want to get in there and do it. So for me, there wasn't really much of a gap. It was day one, straight into it. So I can't really speak to that there. What I will note was really important for that was getting really strong numbers in place for, I think we aimed at for at least the 3 years prior to listing our business for sale. We needed good profit numbers. When we sold, it included, team members on our books. So it wasn't just, I'm walking out the door and that's it. No one knows how to do things. The team members were on. So that was certainly very helpful. So in terms of photographers looking at when they want to sell, if you've got a team, that certainly makes it helpful, because a new buyer will be looking at going this way, yeah, but I want continuity. How can I get continuity if I'm a brand new person stepping in? So that was helpful. The other thing I will note on the sale part is we'd operated our whole business the whole time under a business name, not under a personal name.
Right. Yes.
My experience with everything that I've seen is that trying to sell Jonathan Corbett photography would be much harder than it would be selling a generic name. So if you're looking ahead and you're going, well, I'm Jonathan Corbett photography now, but I want to sell in 5 years' time, I'd be looking at doing a rebrand and branding it with a generic business name, because that's going to make it much easier, because then that continuity is there. I know some have... Go ahead.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. And I agree with you completely. I realized this about 5 years ago. I had originally branded my real estate photography business, and it was Oak Hill Studios.
Okay.
Which has nothing to do with real estate photography, and it has nothing to do with the local market. So I decided, well, if I'm going to, I like to think many, many years ahead. So I recognize that, man, if I'm going to one day scale the business and decades from now potentially sell it, the brand is wrong. So I rebranded it and called it Triad, which is what my area of North Carolina is called, real estate media. So we're the prominent area. Everyone, when you hear the names, like, oh, you know exactly what it is, and it is very sellable. So and sounds like, once again, it's just so good to hear that other people have realized the same thing, especially people who have gone through the entire process. What types of buyers look at a business like that? Did you sell to one of your employees? Was it a real estate agent or a brokerage? Like, what type of people did you have looking at it?
Yeah, we had we had a couple of people who were really interested, who were just general business investors, and they then wanted, or they were found it appealing to have continuity of team and things continuing to run. So they just wanted to come in as basically management and then have the photography team continue to do all of the work. We ended up selling, though, to a family that just found the whole concept appealing. They actually moved up from another city. They bought the business and, they liked that they could just step in, and from day one, they had clients booking shoots.
Right.
Like they didn't have to go through that building process. So they just had passion for photo and video, and for them, it was a good fit. I will, though, just note, so going back to what you were talking about with your business name, I would certainly perhaps take a slightly different point of view there, just to make sure.
Don't worry. Hey, trust me, you can disagree with me as much as you like. I'm not sure if you've seen some other episodes of the podcast, but they can get quite hot, caliente. So, but people love to see it. I tell you what, there's some of the most, the best podcasts as far as ratings and comments go. So disagree with me, and you don't learn. Hey, by the way, one of the things I live and breathe by is being unclear is unkind. I do believe that. So please be clear with me, because it could save me millions of dollars. So
yeah, maybe not quite that much, but
you never know.
What I would lean into is photographers getting clear in terms of their business name. Unless they are really fully committed to just doing real estate media, I wouldn't include real estate media in the business name, because that makes it more challenging to then move outside of real estate and start working with construction companies, kitchen companies, hotels, etc. Now, obviously, you could set up a different brand that would be across that, but then you just have to be aware that you have that responsibility around potentially a whole new website, because otherwise you've got, whatever realestatemedia.com. Right. You can't then send a hotel company to that, or they land on that site and then they're expecting real estate kind of pricing for it. So if a photographer is thinking, I want to do real estate, but I also want to work with hotels and interior designers, I would just be factoring in the business name in that regard and just keeping real estate out of it and just going with something a little bit more generic.
Okay. Man, you are an incredible wealth of knowledge. I can't honestly believe it's very clear to me that you've worked with businesses of all kinds, not just real estate, but also architecture and design, high end, low end, volume, boutique, you name it. You clearly have experience. And one of the things that I feel like isn't well known is that I feel like you should be one of the most prominent mentors in the industry. But I'm not sure if as many people know about you as they should. So I have one more question I want to ask you, but first, the best place to go would be to buildafphotographybusiness.com. That is www.buildafphotographybusiness.com. Is that the best place to go to learn more?
That's where you'll find my website, or on the socials at Build a Photo Business.
Okay, great. And the last question I have to ask you, what kind of numbers should a healthy real estate photography business be expecting? And we can do ratios, however you want to, whatever you're comfortable with. One that is scaled, where the business owner is, doing it right, and there's a small variable in the equation. What kind of numbers can we expect to sell a business? I know a lot of people too. You guys need to avoid this, where you guys are in denial of the situation you're in, and you're just burnt out, and you haven't scaled, and your business is a disaster. Your accounting books are a complete mess. And it's impossible to sell your business in that situation. So I'm being clear here. This is a healthy business that is well documented. As you said, you guys made sure that you're showing good profits for 2 or 3 years before you plan to sell. You did this very purposely and premeditably. And if you guys do it the right way, what kind of numbers can you expect?
So I can only speak from my own experience. So we sold for it was about between sort of 60 to 70% of annual revenue. Okay. Not profit.
Okay.
So that was our experience when we first started advertising the business. We were advertising for around 100% of annual revenue.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't getting the bites that we wanted at that. So after several months, we then pulled back. And in pulling that down, that's when we started getting more interest, and that was when we got that sold. My own sort of study on this is somewhere between sort of 50% to maybe 150% of annual revenue. It's going to probably depend on how involved you are as the business owner.
Okay.
So if you've created and put systems in place where you're able to step away and have your team basically run things, that's going to have a whole lot more value to either another photographer or to a business investor than someone where, you as the business owner need to be working 70 hours a week because you're the main photographer in that company. So how you structure it will have a massive impact as to where you sit on that spectrum.
Okay. And here's a few questions I have about this. And man, I really wish I could ask you all these questions. So I have about 1,001 questions I have come up with just talking to you because you have been involved at so many stages of real estate photography here. One of them here is, when I hear those numbers, it doesn't exactly make sense to me to sell the business ever.
Okay.
And here's why. Because if you do have a well-scaled business, even all my businesses at scale are easily making 50, 60% profits. When I was alone, I was making 80 or 90% profits. But at scale, I'm 50 or 60% profits, and I could be far north of that if I wanted to. But I kind of like to cruise.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to, as you have talked about, just burn yourself out and work around the clock. I like to have a balanced life.
Yep.
But it seems to me when I look at the math, I could sell a business and get 50% of or 70% of the annual revenue. Another metric I've seen is 2 to 3x your annual profits is what you might be able to get. Mm-hmm. But if I truly have a scaled business that's running itself, why wouldn't I just keep that for another decade and earn the revenue and just keep it myself?
Exactly.
So that's a question I have. It seems like businesses are not being valued highly enough. I feel like, heck, when I go to buy a car and I finance a car or a home loan, I'm signing up for 5 years, possibly, for a car. I pay for all my cars in cash. Frankly, I recommend you guys do the same. Yep. And for a home, I'm expected to possibly be in debt for 15 to 30 years. Yet a business owner only gets 1 year of their annual revenue or less. I feel like obviously everybody sells it at that. I'm not saying you got a bad deal. I'm saying your deal goes right along with all the other deals I've heard about and been experienced with. I just don't see myself selling for that, and I would like to keep my business if that's the situation.
Yep.
So can you talk to that? Is it just peace of mind and, I don't know, an extra check rather than just letting it resolve over time? I don't know.
I think it's so one, if you can structure the business in such a way that you can basically not need to be heading into the office every day, and you can kind of take on kind of that CEO role or something like that, where you're overseeing it but not operating day to day. I mean, I think that's quite right. I'd just hold on to that and allow it to continue to run, unless I'd made a decision that, I just want out. I just want to step away, and that's not a bad thing either. That's just a different decision. So I think get comfortable with what you want to be doing, but being involved in the day-to-day and getting burned out is a really different thing to being that kind of CEO operator who is simply running the business, but other people are doing the sort of day-to-day work. If you can get the business to that point and you're, not quite passive, but you're sort of doing almost passive income and earning a good income from it, that's awesome. I mean, that's peak kind of
Right.
business operations. I'd
Yeah.
hang with that.
Yeah, I heard my roommate actually told me one time, and I'm actually thinking about bringing him on the podcast because he's responsible for the fact that I am financially literate,
Okay.
that I am an entrepreneur. I don't really love that word, but I started my own business. I like to word it that way, and that I got started in software. He's the reason, and man, we're close. But one of the things he told me was, Jonathan, until you go on vacation and you come back to work and your business has grown without you, you don't
Mhm.
own a business, you own a job.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
100%.
and he's very wise. He beyond his years. I do feel like when I speak with him, he's someone who has kind of lived several lives. But anyway, man, I really appreciate your wealth of knowledge. I could sit here and ask you questions easily, I think, for 4 or 5 hours. However, we don't have that kind of time. So if you guys want to learn more from him, I highly recommend you go to his website or his socials. But buildaphotographybusiness.com, he's got a contact page right there where you can send him a message or follow him anywhere you want. And thank you very much, Darryl, for coming on. You've been fantastic. And this has been 2 podcasts, Rich Baum and Darryl Stringer. And I feel like both of you are individuals who have been in the industry for a long time and still don't miss a beat. And I don't just hand that out. I think we've just got really good guests on the podcast.
Thank you very much. No, it's been great. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. And of course, don't forget Real Estate Media here if you guys want to sign up for a great scheduling software. And then, of course, if you guys want to get some mentorship from me as well, you can always do that at realestatephotographymasterclass.com. So thank you guys. I really appreciate you watching. And if you have any questions, always leave them down in the comments. I do pay attention to those. So thank you. Thank you, Darryl, very much.
Thanks, John.
Bye-bye.